Suck it up. To endure something painful, unpleasant, or otherwise dissatisfactory. To deal with or recover from some hardship or stress. Suck it up. Endure something painful. Welcome to the podcast, everybody. I like to start things off with story time. And Wayne, as you know, I've been flipping this house to get it ready. And I like to start listening to podcasts instead of listening to music. I feel it does a couple things for me. One, it's like a homework assignment for me since we are now in the podcasting world. And two, it expands my horizons quite a bit. And one of my favorite authors, Matthew McConaughey, happened to be on Diary of a CEO. And I was absolutely amazed because I love listening to Diary of a CEO. And even though we don't get paid to endorse Greenlight, the book that Matthew McConaughey wrote, it's a phenomenal book for any of our listeners out there. They want a really inspirational read. And he was talking about having too many options can be essentially the downfall of people. And even though it's early on in our pod today, Bryson, if you could bring that clip up, it's pretty interesting because it goes into the topic that we're going to be discussing today.
I guess it begs the question about the role or the benefit of having plan Bs, because we're increasingly told to have plan B in a relationship, or plan C, D, and E, and in work a plan C, D, and E. And
options can make us a tyrant. Too many options can make a tyrant of any of us, man.
And I think that's a great, interesting perspective or an interesting point today, that having too many options, particularly in relationships, can make you a tyrant. What are your thoughts on that, Wayne?
I think we have too many options nowadays in everything. A lot of times, I don't go on social media too much, but there's these channels on TikTok and YouTube where they'll use AI and they'll go through what it was like being a kid in the 90s. And they'll say, yeah, being a kid in the 90s, we used to go to Blockbuster and get one or two movies for the entire weekend, and that was it. We would watch it through, and that was our entertainment. And nowadays, obviously, we have so many options with streaming services, and it's the same thing with dating. It leads to something that I found, because obviously me and you are married. We're not in the dating market, so we have to constantly keep track of all these different things that are being put out there. And Bryson, if you want to pull up the clip that I sent to you, this is a new term that just came about.
Yeah, and this term is called monkey barring. Is that what it's called?
Monkey barring, yeah.
Met someone who's never single, not even for a week. One breakup ends, and boom, suddenly they're already in a brand new relationship. But here's the secret: that new partner was never really new. This toxic dating trend is called monkey barring. Just like swinging on monkey bars, they never let go of one hand until the next bar is firmly in reach. It looks like love, but it's really fear. Fear of being alone, fear of facing themselves. Experts call it emotional cheating in disguise, because while one partner thinks the relationship is real, the other is already shopping for their replacement. And the cruel twist: monkey barring doesn't just hurt the people they date. It keeps the monkey barrer trapped, forever clinging, never growing. Ever met someone who's
That was from the USA Today last week, talking about this new term. So I guess it makes sense with all these different options out there, especially if you're a younger, attractive woman. Why just be in a relationship with one guy? You got five other guys message you behind the back. I guess it seems like, especially Gen Z, they're just keeping other options on the sideline. So if something happens to their person that they are going out with, okay, cool, you got a couple other people ready to go.
And not only that, for the women's side of it, but from the men's side of it that are in that top 10% of echelon of dating, they're doing the same thing. I remember seeing a report about them having an issue with deciding who to continue to date because they were essentially hoarding all of the women, the guys that were over 6 foot making tons of money and that were in the dating aspect. So I think that's really interesting because I think it goes both ways, regardless whether you're a male or a female. Monkey barring is occurring in our society. And now the question for our viewers is what do we do about it? Now that we have identified a problem, what what would you suggest if you're somebody in your 20s? What would you suggest to our viewers and listeners to not monkey bar and to focus on dating one person? When you do listen to the Matthew McConaughey and Diary of a CEO, he does talk about going all in with one person and how much that is an issue in today's society, that people don't do that.
I think like anything else in life, it's a balance. You don't want to just stick it out with somebody for the rest of your life, regardless of how awful they treat you. But at the same time, you also don't want to hit the eject button once there's any sign of turmoil in the relationship. Any relationship that is worth having is going to have your ups and downs. I've had plenty of ups and downs in my relationship. You've had a number of them as well. And that's when you look back on it, that's what really allows that bond to be strong. So I think it's probably just for these younger folks that are dating, just not ejecting so quick. There is a certain point when you will say, okay, this is probably not going to work out. But having 3 or 4 people on the sidelines, it's almost like you're already expecting the worst. Some people might say that's a good thing, but you might not put as much into that relationship because you're like, oh well, yeah, this guy's got one good trait that I like. Guy has another, instead of just going all in with that person.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and I don't know how we combat it from society besides stop doing it. And if you have issues yourself, focus on yourself first before you start dating. And going back to our conversation with Juan, be upfront with people. If you're in a position where you can't have a long-term relationship and you're just in it for a short term while, be upfront with the other person about that and say, I'm really focusing on myself. I'm not looking for anything long term right now. On the flip side, if you are looking for something a little bit more long term, be upfront with that as well. So great advice from our dating coach we talked to yesterday.
Yeah, going along with that, I think just telling people, especially if you're a guy, maybe you don't have a ton of experience and all of a sudden you go through your growth spurt, you're looking better, making more money than you ever have before. I can see the appeal of saying, "Hey, I want to play the field," but just be open with whoever you're dating. If she believes that she's the only person in your life, but there's actually 2 or 3 other women behind the scenes, that's pretty deceptive. You want to convey what's going on up front, and then you tell her, hey, I'm dating these other people, but then you decide, hey, I broke it off with all these other people, you're the one that I want to pursue something more serious. I think that's better than making her think she's the only one, and then she finds out, and then most likely she's not going to react too positively to that news.
I also think it depends on what situation you're in. If you're recently going through divorce, then I could see you dating multiple people at the same time. If you're somebody who it has never been divorced, for example, then I think it's a little bit different where I think, yeah, you should probably focus on one person at a time. But I think after a divorce, I think there's reasons for people to say, hey, I can understand dating multiple people because you know what you want, you know what you don't want, and you know what to avoid. So you might do that to see if any of those red flags come up. And then if they come up sooner, you just cross them off, I guess. Tae Young, we didn't ask him if he's in the dating scene. I believe he's 25 years old from Denver. You were 25, is that correct? Or you're in your 20s?
I'm actually a lot older than that. I know I look really young, but I'm actually 10 years older than that. But I just look really young, and in fact, this isn't uncommon. I was at my second cousin's high school graduation, and someone thought that I was a high school student. That's just how it is with me. Like everyone thinks that I'm like way younger than I really am, and even at like work, like there's a lot of people that think I'm an intern. Like I remember there was a guy who asked me, when does your internship end? And then I tried to explain to him that I'm not an intern. I work here full time.
Next time that happens, play it up. Absolutely. Next time somebody misjudges your age, whatever it is, just play it up. If they're like, "Oh, are you an intern?" Yeah, absolutely. Just play into it for a little bit. I like to mess around with people sometimes like that. Now, are you married?
No, I'm not married at all.
Okay, so you are in the dating market.
I'm currently not dating anyone right now. I have dated someone in the past, but unfortunately that didn't work out. She was very religious. I'm not as religious as her. Just unfortunately just did not work out. But I got nothing against her.
Gotcha. You didn't find that she was monkey barring, or she had somebody else in the sidelines or anything? Is that something that you ran into in Denver?
I have not experienced this myself. I haven't met any women that I felt were monkey barring.
Isn't that such a
pretty much-
weird term? It's
Yeah,
such a
like-
weird term. Like, what the hell? Well, there's nothing wrong with that. So you're in tech, is that correct?
Yeah, so I work in B2B enterprise technology, and I've worked mostly in software companies pretty much my whole life.
How long do you think before AI takes over a job like yours, realistically?
That's a good question. In fact, very soon. Like, I've definitely noticed that the tech industry as a whole has changed a lot. I know that in around 2020 to around 2022, the interest rates were really low. So because of that, tech companies were hiring anyone. Like, they were like hiring people before they even had work for them to do. So they just hired way too many people and felt like a lot of tech companies were simply just trying to hire as many people as possible to prevent their competition from hiring them. And then once interest rates went up, there's been lots of mass layoffs with people getting laid off, especially in tech. And a lot of people have been replaced with AI and also H-1B immigrants. And I've definitely seen this where I work at. And the thing about AI is that essentially one person can like now do the job of like 4 people. So why have
Oh my God.
yeah, 4 people when you can just have one? So you might as well
And then
sack
you're
the
not
other
paying
3.
you're not paying the AI a pension or union dues, or you're not hearing them complain and bitch about holiday pay or whatever the case may be. I mean, that's realistic. I know as far as the H-1Bs, they just pass an executive order where it's $100,000 more for a company to hire an H-1B. I don't know when that starts. I know Trump just passed that as an executive order for H-1B visas, that if a company does hire somebody who is not an American citizen, they pay $100,000. It's either per year or $100,000 once. Based enough, you can look that up and mention it in our comments to talk about it later. I would assume AI is coming down the pipeline in all tech. It's one of those things where when you see that coming down the pipeline, what is plan B for you as far as AI taking over the tech industry?
That's a good question. I guess it's definitely something I need to think about. But I've been thinking about like other career paths, starting my own business. Obviously, there are certain jobs that can't be replaced with AI. How I see things going in the future is that tech companies are going to get smaller and smaller, and other jobs like manufacturing, a lot of that is now being done by robots, also powered by AI. And I have a relative who works as a lawyer, and she mostly does business law. She told me she's a like independent lawyer. She has her own practice, and she told me that
Sure.
her practice is now struggling because they don't need her to review or draft contracts. They can just use a chat GPT to do that. And I noticed that lots of lawyers are like really struggling now. So I heard about these robot hands that come from the ceiling that can do surgery. So they're like AI that's now doing surgery.
I did
So
end
you
up
don't-
seeing that. I can't remember if that was, I know it was in the United States. I can't remember if it was in Denver, because I know Denver has a huge hospital there. But yeah, where they did an entire AI operation. A surgeon was on standby observing it, but it was 100% done by AI. And I saw the conference that Elon gave. This was about 2 weeks ago. This was the other thing I was watching today, where he said by next year, we'll be able to order a fully humanoid Tesla bot, because they had to figure out the 28 degrees of human hands. And he said, but by next year, you should be able to order that for 20,000. Yesterday, when I was talking with Wayne, I said, I can't wait to order one of these robots to clean, paint, lay flooring, whatever this essential may be. And then I'm listening to this thing about when Elon Musk is saying by the end of next year, you should be able to order these robots for $20,000. And I'm thinking, oh man, this is going to replace a lot of workforce across everywhere. Like, it's going to be huge. And they're expecting to do about 1 million of them a year.
Yesterday on the podcast, we were talking about this, how AI is going to affect so many jobs. I think we said 50% of jobs will be affected by 2035. One of the things people can do is to join the creator economy, which, AI is going to affect that as well. But I know from looking at your ex that you have a book on Kickstarter. So it looks like you've maybe to a certain extent already started to join the creator
Yeah, I've been trying to get into the creator economy, and I've noticed that AI is also starting to, get into the creator economy because if you go on Kickstarter, you'll find that there's like quite a few AI comics on there that are like completely done by AI, and there are even like AI novels. And
So what kind of book are you putting on Kickstarter?
first of all, I want to point out that no AI was used in the creation of my book. My book is a graphic novel called Return of the Rooftop Koreans. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with like the LA riots or the phenomenon of the Rooftop Koreans.
Dude, in the LA riots during the Rodney King riots, there is
Rodney
nothing but
King.
a shitload of stores that were burning down except for the convenience stores. And the convenience stores had fucking Koreans sitting on the top of them with 12 gauge shotguns saying, "You're not burning my fucking store down." And those were the only stores that weren't burnt down. Is that what this book is about?
Yeah, so it's kind of like that. It's mostly inspired by that. It takes place in the present, mostly about what if something like this were to happen today. So it's kind of about a new generation of rooftop Koreans. It's essentially about a Korean American grocery store owner who ends up shooting and killing a black man in self-defense during an attempted robbery. And the media eventually twists and distorts the fact, and they, falsely call him racist, and they try to, cancel him and smear him, and eventually they
So it's a crime drama with political and racist ties in this. How far along are you in writing this book? This sounds amazing. We need to get this book.
it's completely done. So I wrote everything, the artwork is done, everything is complete. So it's now on Kickstarter, which is now being used as a pre-order platform. So technically it's not really being crowdfunded. It's already done.
Now, when you say it's a graphic novel, you mean just because you go into detail?
By graphic novel, I mean it's like
Or is there a ton of artwork in there?
Yeah, so it's like a comic book, but it's not a single issue floppy with like 32 pages. It's a full length graphic novel that's 148 pages.
All with artwork on each page?
Not
or
each
throughout,
page,
throughout it, but a good amount of it. No, I think that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, the majority of the pages have artwork. So it's a really large comic book, basically.
That's great. And what have you raised so far on Kickstarter?
So, in addition to using Kickstarter, I'm also using Indiegogo. So both Indiegogo and Kickstarter combined, I have a 1,300. So not that much, though.
Hey, that's still something. I think on my Amazon one, I only had $800 or $900 on my book that I published. So you're beating me. But I think your story's a little more entertaining. I like it. I'll definitely check it out on Kickstarter. Where's your X so that way our viewers and listeners can look you up and then check out the book and things of that nature?
So it's at anti-woke books.
Yeah, and going along with the anti-woke, I know we had talked before we got on air about some different topics. And I know one of the topics that you have a lot of knowledge on, and you echo those sentiments in your book, is the demasculinity of men in movies and comics and different popular forms of culture. Could you touch on that a little bit? And obviously you have some books to back it up with some knowledge.
Especially if you look at modern movies, TV shows, video games, or books that have come out in like the last maybe 10, 15 years. Feels like masculinity has been degraded and pushed aside, and we don't really have a lot of strong male protagonists. For instance, a lot of like male protagonists these days are these beta male types. They're weak and wimpy, and you'll see in many Hollywood movies or TV shows that the dads are always portrayed as being clueless buffoons. Meanwhile, the women are the smart, confident ones. And we also see lots of male protagonists now being pushed to the side and replaced with like female leads. For instance, in the new Witcher video game, Thrall has been replaced with Ciri. And Ghost of Yotai, they now have a female protagonist, and like Nathan Drake.
They don't give
Uncharted.
people the option. They just force people automatically.
Yeah, all these male protagonists have been essentially pushed to the side and replaced with women protagonists now. That's something that is becoming really common in media these days.
My wife and I joke all the time when we watch a new show that comes out. we always joke, when is the woke like black lesbian coming out, or something to that effect. It's true though. You can't watch any show, and I will tell you, like, I don't watch too many current shows, but one of them that I watch is Interview with a Vampire on AMC, and it's absolutely amazing. And I don't know if there are any woke moments in that show because it is pretty graphic, but besides that show, any other show that's been recent, for example, on Netflix, eventually there comes out the woke black lesbian or the woke whatever that they haven't fit yet in the equation. And my wife and I always joke about that. When is that? When is that coming? Oh, here they come. I don't know if it benefits society. I don't think it does, because I think what you're saying is it takes away what it's like to be a man, being not necessarily John Wayne spitting in a platoon or Dirty Harry smoking a cigar. But again, those are things where we are missing in a lot of entertainment movies, unless you're watching Thor or Aquaman or Captain America. What are your thoughts on that, Wayne? I'm trying to think of other movies, even when we go to Disney movies. Moana's a great one. There's nothing wrong with Moana, but a lot of other ones, that even the recent Little Mermaid that came out, she was black instead of white, and I guess that pissed a lot of people off. I didn't see the big deal in that, but I do know that there is a lot of woke moments in that movie, because my wife and I ended up watching it and we were like, what the hell? We'll stick with the original Disney one.
Tae Young hits the nail on the head. When you look at the last 20 years, you have so many roles where the men are just buffoons and idiots, and they don't know what really, they're just portraying this awful light. You think about Judd Apatow movies. You have 40-Year-Old Virgin, you have Knocked Up, then you have, let's say, Modern Family. That was one of the most popular shows on TV, where Phil Dunphy, the main character, is an idiot. Everyone makes fun of him all the time. And I have a clip to support this sentiment of really what's happened these last bunch of years. This was actually a clip from former President Obama, who was talking about how he acknowledges some mistakes that he made. Bryson, if you're able to pull up that clip.
And I will say, as quote unquote progressives, Democrats, progressive parents, enlightened ones, we've made that mistake sometimes in terms of our rhetoric, where it's like we're constantly talking about, what's wrong with the boys instead of what's right with them. We rightly have tried to invest in girls to make sure that there's a level playing field, and then they're not barred from opportunities. But we haven't been as willing, I think, to be intentional about investing in the boys, and that's been a mistake. And I think people are starting to recognize that. So going back to your optimism, I think there's a healthier conversation taking place now, both among this new generation of young women and men, but also among the public at large, that's starting to see, like, hey, we got to do better by our boys. And if we do better by our boys, and we're producing stronger, more confident men, that's going to be good for our girls and our women as well.
So a couple interesting points there. I mean, first off, give him credit whether you agree with him or not. If you are Democrat, Republican, it takes a man to admit that he made some mistakes. But think about it. If you're a 20-year-old guy right now, right? You were born in roughly 2005. There's been a Democratic president in office for the majority of your life. And Obama served 2 terms. And then Biden, who is Obama's VP, served another term. So he's basically telling you that, yeah, they favored women. They focused more on how boys were stupid and kind of the negative qualities of boys. But at least now that it is starting to turn, if the damage is done, really, if someone's 20, they have all these bad examples of men being buffoons in the media. They have the presidency saying, yeah, women are superior. And now that's obviously why we have a lot of the problems we have today.
For sure. I hear that. I'm glad. First of all, Obama is by far one of the best orators of our time. He really knows how to bring in a crowd. But as far as him owning up to the mistakes of the progressives, I think that's great, because there are no men in the Democratic Party or on the left party that are charismatic. Maybe Pete Buttigieg, maybe. Like, and that's a strong maybe. But besides that, you look at them, and the majority of, even in the dating world that we found out, there's the majority of men that are dating in their 20s and whatnot happen to be conservatives. So it's one of those things where I think as people understand the mistakes where you do need to focus more on men, I think you're going to be dealing with people a little bit more on the right side than progressives.
I noticed that as well, and it does seem like I don't know if you guys ever heard the saying, the pendulum always swings back. So I feel like
Mm.
that's what's happening right now. The pendulum's now swinging back, and it's starting to go more towards the center or towards the right. And obviously, I did read somewhere that young men overwhelmingly voted Republicans. So it seems like the Democrat Party, they lost the young male vote. I think maybe they
Oh, and then
realized,
after Charlie
yeah.
Kirk being assassinated, and then people going nuts off of that, they're losing even more young men. Like now they're losing young men and young women just being completely turned off by that whole fucking thing. And they're just like, what the fuck is wrong with you people? What are you thinking? And the political rhetoric does need to calm down. I even know that there is two people who got shot at an ICE facility, and it was actually somebody who was a left-wing radical, and he ended up killing an illegal immigrant and wounding two other illegal immigrants. Didn't end up hurting either of the ICE agents, and then ended up taking his own life. And it's like the political rhetoric needs to be toned down on all sides, but we still need to we still need to recognize that men need to be men, but it just needs to tone down a little bit.
There's some really great information out there. I think what Ty said is great. Is correct. That the pendulum is swinging back. Richard Reeves, who I've quoted a couple times on this podcast, he's been on Diary of a CEO and a couple other really popular podcasts. But he wrote a book in 2022 called "Of Boys and Men," and it has some really great solutions in there. One of them is for more men to get into education, because there's some stats out there where 89% of primary school teachers in the US are women. It's a little less worldwide, 67%, but still, I mean, if
Wow.
you're a young man, and traditionally your dad is going to be the breadwinner. I know that that's changed a little bit here recently, but I know like when I was growing up, my dad worked most of the time, so I was basically raised a lot by my mother, and I had mostly women teachers, right? So if I'm always around women, it makes sense that these guys are just very feminine nowadays.
That makes sense. I could see when I went fishing with you and I had to worm your hook, how that would make you a little bit more true story. I completely agree. If you are primarily raised by women and having most of your teachers are women, I could see how it makes you a little bit more feminine. And that's one of those things where growing up, I didn't have a choice when the water pump went out in the van that Saturday. My dad and I were replacing it. I didn't have a choice on whether or not I wanted to be out there with him. It was, you're getting your ass out here and you're going to replace that. But that was the manly thing to do. And that's the thing to learn about being a man. And I don't have any disrespect or anything like that. I think that that's what's missing in today's world is people don't do that enough with their sons. When I was listening to Matthew McConaughey, he was talking about how he wasn't allowed to watch more than 30 minutes of television per night. And when he got home, of course, he wasn't allowed in after school until the streetlights came on, which is kind of how most of us were raised back then. My mom was good enough to always make me a sandwich first, and then she'd kick me out of the house, and then I'd come home on the street nights. But I think the pendulum's definitely swinging back. I remember, Wayne, I mentioned to you, this was maybe a couple months ago, I said, I've had friends who've gone over to Russia looking for wives or women. And they say it's the polar opposite of the United States, where any guy can pick up any 10 in Russia just by asking for directions. He said it's literally the polar opposite. Men are looked at as like women are in the United States. And he said that that's how it is in Russia. I think the pendulum's swinging the other way, where I think men are going to be more sought after. The other day, I went to a taco truck, and there was this attractive lady who ordered some tacos. It was right at 5 o'clock, and she kept hanging around. And I was just making polite conversation with her, but it was one of those things where I could tell that she was yearning for more companionship. And I was just like, I'm just here to get some tacos and go record a podcast, lady, and make polite conversation. There's nothing wrong with polite conversation. But I could tell that there is definitely a change because my guess is she was probably in her late 20s and she wasn't used to a guy talking to her out of the blue. Because I know that's something we've talked about before, Wayne, is women in their 20s are just not used to men talking to them at all or being approached. But yeah, I think the pendulum is definitely swinging the other way.
Yeah, it's swinging the other way. And true that a lot of women have never been asked out or approached in their entire lives. It's just would be weird for most women if some guy approached them and asked them out. The way our culture is now, that's considered inappropriate. And a lot of men are taught at an early age by their mothers or by their female teachers that approaching women in public is considered sexual harassment, and the only type of dating you should be doing is online, going on the dating apps. And a lot of boys, they don't have a father figure to teach them how to approach girls.
Now, what would you say to our listeners and our viewers? What recommendations would you give to any of our guys who are hesitant or more anxious, who haven't had those examples for young men? What would you say to them?
I would say don't waste time with online dating. Try to approach women in person. And when it comes to approaching women in person, the first thing you should do is obviously, do a little wink like that and see how she responds. If she turns her head like that, don't approach. If she
If I had
smiles
some
or
guy wink at me, I might be like, that guy's kind of creepy. I'd say don't wink. Just go up and approach him and say something. You're going to be way better off. Winking is going to be like, what does winking mean? Because winking might mean something in Denver that it doesn't mean in Michigan or California. I would say definitely approach them, especially if they're not used to it. Because she was even saying, she's like, oh, well, this is my dinner. And she's like, oh, well, this is dinner for me if you woke up at 6. And they said, yeah, I started working at 6. They said, but I still call it lunch because I still have 6 hours of work to do. And of course, it was 5 o'clock at night. Welcome to entrepreneurship. You would say to our young listeners out there to go and approach them.
The reason why I was suggesting winking is I feel like winking is a way to test the waters. If she either smiles or blushes, then you can approach her. So I found that works, but obviously I'm not the best with approaching women. I'm not a pickup artist, obviously.
Maybe that's got to work in Denver more than it works in Michigan. I got to try that next time I'm in Denver with my wife in the grocery store. Be like, hey, honey, I got to go wink at this girl and see what happens. It's for research.
So you obviously said, hey, you should focus more on the in-person dating. Is it safe to assume that you've tried the online dating scene and either didn't like it, didn't have the best success, or what's your experience with that?
Just say online dating is a massive waste of time. Obviously, if you're not a 6'5" ad with 6-pack abs and a $250,000 salary, you're probably not going to do very well when it comes to online dating. I read somewhere that 90% of the women like to go after the top 10% of men. You don't have much of a chance when it comes to online dating. Women in general get hundreds and hundreds of matches. Meanwhile, a guy will get 3 matches, and these 3 matches.
Bro,
will
I've
all be
seen people on TikTok and baseball games, and they're on Tinder, and then they're just nonstop swiping to the right, where people behind them are recording them, and then they just post because the guys are just like, fuck it, I'm just going to match with everybody, because men are at that point where they're like, I just want some companionship, where women are being inundated by tons of guys who are doing that. And I think the online dating, I don't know, it just seems so foreign to me. I just say you're way better off sitting across the table from somebody, sitting next to somebody at a bar, and being able to read their body language to get a better vibe off of them than reading a tone in a text. I've had people get upset with me when I text them and they're like, well, your tone, it's a fucking text. There's no tone in a text. Am I being off kilter here? Is there no tone in a text, or is there tone in a text? You tell me, Wayne.
There is some tone in the text, but I definitely agree with you and Ty that it's way easier to show your personality in person, where most women are excluding guys who don't meet their 6-foot requirements, unrealistic number they want people to make. Whereas in person, if you are lacking in some areas, like our guest, yesterday, obviously Juan, he had told me off air that he's not that tall. You can say he's like 5'4", 5'5". He he had to make up for it in other areas. So he went to the gym. He started looking a little bit better. He built up his personality. He's got a good sense of humor. So if you're
Yeah,
lacking
he
in certain areas, you can make up for it with other things.
Yeah, he mentioned he was taking on alpha qualities, which is funny because it's tying in with this episode here, talking about emasculating men. And he said he wasn't always an alpha male, but taking on some alpha qualities really helped him step up his game and dating.
Just getting out there and getting the experience will pay huge dividends because nobody is really approaching anymore. I did approach back when I was single. This is like 2009, 2010. Then obviously you had a lot of things happen. You had the Me Too movement. You had, like Ty alluded to earlier, all these women saying, "Oh, if you approach somebody, you're a creep." Basically, guys stopped approaching, and then we alluded to it in a couple episodes ago, where women now are posting TikToks. Oh, I got dressed up to the nines and no one's even approaching me. What is going on? There is a large number of women that are coming around saying, okay, I want to be approached. I want to actually go out and meet people. I don't want to have to deal with this online crap where people can just make these fake profiles in this. So I think you're right, Ty. Just going out there and is in person is way better nowadays.
I did see a short where there was a dating event, a singles dating event. It was in Denver, and there was something like 15 women and 2 guys. So if guys are interested in dating, these single events that they keep setting up, and I saw one that was in California too, where it was like 28 women and 4 guys. If you're at that point where women are like, where the hell are all the guys at? Start going to some of those dating events. Let me ask you a question on your book. Why did you end up writing your book, Rooftop Koreans?
The idea started in 2020, but the idea popped in my head during the COVID-19 lockdowns, and of course with the George Floyd riots. Yeah, and those riots, they kind of reminded me of like 1992 LA riots. I obviously was very young when the 1992 LA riots happened, and so I learned about that from my mother and my uncle. They told me like what happened.
Family members who were on the rooftops there with holding the shotguns, because I was 12 years old when it happened, and my degree is in political science, so I'm very familiar with a lot of the political events that have occurred in the United States, and that's one of them where I knew about the story of the Rooftop Koreans because they were the only stores that weren't getting burnt down to the ground because they were standing up on their rooftops with shotguns. Was that some of your family members?
Yes and no. I do have an uncle who lives in LA, but he wasn't one of the Rooftop Koreans. He fled when the riots were happening. So some of them did stay behind, and some people, like my uncle, just ran away. Very familiar with the story. And as I was saying, yeah, George Floyd riots, it kind of reminded me of that. And I kept thinking to myself, hey, maybe it's time for the Rooftop Koreans to make a comeback. And that's when the idea first appeared in my head, but I really started. The first draft of the script I wrote was in 2022. Obviously, there's been more riots since then. Antifa is constantly rioting everywhere. So obviously, that's where the idea came from. All these riots that are going on. I always wonder what it would be like if the Rooftop Koreans made a comeback today.
I like it. And if you do it in different stories, you can do it in a couple different parts. This could be book 1 of like a 3 or 4 book series. So this book took you overall a couple of years, right?
I wouldn't say it took me a long time. The first draft was in 2022, but I didn't do much with it. But I think the final draft came in 2023, I think sometime in spring of 2024 when I began hiring artists to work on the graphic novel.
Gotcha. And what do you hope to accomplish by having this book printed? Does your first book have a moral or an ethical question involved that's in there? Or does it just talk about like race tensions?
There's a lot of different themes in the book. So obviously one theme regards around the topic of self-defense. What is self-defense? What is justified self-defense? And the topic of self-defense has come up a lot in the news and in the world of
the guy that was
politics.
on the subway that ended up stopping the other guy that was like trying to stab people, and then next thing you know, it was one of the biggest trials.
Daniel Penny.
Yeah, Daniel Penny. You see self-defense pop up all the time, and it becomes a huge topic of discussion. So it goes into the details and some of the morals of that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so focusing on like what is self-defense and who gets to define justice and what is justice. I also focused on like other themes about um like working hard. There's a quote in the book, and the quote is, "Don't mistake my hard work for privilege and your laziness for oppression." And that's an idea that I tackle. What is privilege? What is oppression? And that's something I really wanted to explore.
That's a really good quote. That sounds very George Orwellian, I will say. I've read Animal Farm a bunch of times in 1984. That sounds very George Orwellian when you say something like that. Don't mistake my hard work for privilege. And what's the other portion of it?
And your laziness for oppression.
I like that. That's a pretty good statement.
So earlier, you were talking about the H-1B visa, and Bryson pulled up that, yeah, it's 100,000 per new HB1 visa. So is that something that affects you, Ty, or people you know?
Hopefully not, but I've noticed that people have been laid off, even at the company that I work at, and I noticed that there was a new wave of H-1B hires that have come in to replace the people that were previously laid off. Fortunately for me, I was not laid off, but that could change in the future. I hope not. I hope that I do not get replaced by an H-1B. And I hear the job market right now is really bad. And I also read that there's more people looking for jobs than there are jobs available. And I also noticed that I read somewhere oftentimes that when it comes to the job hiring process, you pretty much have no chance. The interviews are just fake interviews. They have no intention of hiring you, and they already have like a guy with an H-1B visa that they plan on hiring. Obviously the
So basically,
H-1B
the tech sector is struggling big time right now.
Yeah, and there's more H-1Bs. I heard Microsoft just laid off 1,000 people, and they also applied for like 20,000 H-1Bs. So I know that's messed up. Lots of people.
Yeah, well, with each new H-1B costing $100,000, maybe that'll change the tech market a little bit. It should. When you're a company and you're saying, well, I got to pay $100,000 and hire somebody overseas, or I can pay an American that extra amount of money compared to what I would be paying the H-1B. I guess it depends. You really have to bridge the gap. That's a corporate thing, but at least they've got that in place to incentivize companies to stay hiring American. And Denver's a pretty huge place. I was just there. It was a couple of weeks ago or a month ago to see an Imagine Dragons concert in Aspen, and it's absolutely beautiful going into Denver.
Where the beer
But
flows
yeah.
like wine, Aspen.
Yeah, Aspen was very foodie hoity-toity. And I'm a big foodie, but I'm not a big foodie hoity-toity guy. I don't need pizza to cost me $65. I think that's what I spent on a pizza, was $65. I'm not that hoity-toity. I can deal with a $30 pizza just fine. Thank you very much. But yeah,
Was it
Aspen,
good? Was it good at least or no?
Oh yeah, it was very good. Don't get me wrong. It was gluten-free, Italian oven baked. It was very good, but it wasn't $65 good. Like $65 pizza should have lobster on it or something.
Well, Ty, I want to ask you a question because I've been looking at a lot of these job statistics as well. And Gen Z has gotten some things right. I know we often say, oh, Gen Z, this and that, very negative. But one thing that the Gen Z kids are doing that I think is great, and I wish my generation did, is they're attending trade schools where when I was going, and I'm 36, so I'm, pretty similar age to you. I know like when I was at that age and considering a trade school, if you didn't mention that you were going to college, like your parents or people that you looked up to, they almost died a little bit inside, saying, "Oh, you're throwing your life away, Wayne. What are you doing?" But now there are people that are wising up and saying, "Okay, there's all these people that are going to school. They're ending up in a couple $100,000 of debt." And they can't get a job with a bachelor's degree or even a master's degree. Why not get into a trade? There's always going to be a need for plumber, mechanics, and HVAC guys. So was that something that you experienced when you were considering going to school, or was there a lot of pressure to go to college and that was pretty much the only thing you could do?
Actually, for my generation, I feel like the public school system is constantly telling you you have to go to college. Like after high school, you need to be going to college. And I also remember in my senior year of high school, it was like one class that I was in, and the teacher asked every student one by one, but across like the classroom to say what college they planned on going to after high school. And there's this mindset that after high school you have to go to college, and most people don't consider going to trade schools at all. It's good that Gen Z is now considering trade schools, as I've heard that there are like Gen Zs with STEM degrees that can't even find a job in the tech field. So the whole learn to code nonsense that was popular 10 years it just doesn't apply today.
My brother, who owns an IT firm, would tell me if I have somebody who has an IT degree from college, he goes, I don't hire them because they're behind the current times. And I thought that's a problem. But now, when you start looking at college and you start saying, I have a degree, but when I was going to college, you were not really guaranteed, but you were promised a better life and a better future, that your degree would had some intrinsic value in it. And that was the video that Wayne shared earlier today that's going to be in the description below. And nowadays, though, when somebody's going to college, they go, how valuable is that degree? It becomes one of those things when they're like, for example, I could see my daughter looking at this, and I've got a 21-year-old, and she goes, my dad's got a degree in college, and he plays poker for a living, and he does podcasting. Her mom does have a doctorate degree, and she does that for pharmaceuticals. But for the most part, unless it's something like that, you can get a degree and then become an artist. And your degree had nothing to do with you becoming an artist, besides maybe learning a few things and you nuances of going to university and putting up with a shitty ass professor that you have to make like you, so that way you can pass his or her class. I think the value of college, and this is coming from somebody who has a degree from the University of Notre Dame, has greatly declined. And I'm hoping that colleges will see this and either start charging less, become smaller, or trade schools become bigger, because eventually some of those things in trade schools will eventually get replaced by AI. But I think you're going to have a lot of pushback politically where people will say, no, for example, we're unions, you have to have human union representatives do the electrical work on new construction, or whatever the case may be, to fit where bots aren't replacing it. But I think even eventually trade schools have a time limit on it. But I think for the immediate time, for probably the next 20 years, they're way more solid, especially if you go into being a linesman, where you're working for the big power utility companies to bring power in and out. Being something like that's going to have a lot more job stability than anything, which is funny because when I was going to school, they did the same thing. Oh, what college is everybody going to? And everybody was like, go in tech, go in tech, go in tech. And now you're here in tech, and tech's being taken over by AI. Get into anything else. It's kind of interesting how we evolved that way.
My first real job, as I've mentioned a couple times on here, was a door-to-door sales job. And we were just out at, we called it a team night. So once a week, we'd all go out to a bar, which was a block away from our office. And we were just sitting there one time. And my boss, Jason, he was like, Wayne, if you think about it, everything in life is sales. And I was like, what do you mean? He was like, explain it to me. What car do you drive? Okay, I drive a Toyota Camry. Okay, why do you drive a Toyota Camry? Because somebody sold you that idea. Like maybe you heard it's a good brand. What about the shirt you're wearing? What about the place you live? College is no different. All these people, they knew, hey, college is not what it once was, but they still have to make money. They still have these monster buildings. They still have to pay the teacher salaries. They're just selling the idea, even though they necessarily can't back up. Like, because college used to be, hey, you get a college degree, you're going to make coming out of college. Now you can't even find a job. And if you do, it's minimum wage that you don't even need a degree for. Crazy times.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And another thing is that I know way back then, there were fewer college graduates. So because of that, your college degree was worth more. But these days, pretty much every millennial and every Gen Z has a college degree. So because of that, a college degree just isn't seen as valuable anymore because there's so many college graduates nowadays.
I said before, I thought college degrees were a way that you could prove that you could get something accomplished and also communicate really effectively because of the amount of papers that you have to write. But with AI, I don't think the communicating effectively is applicable anymore. I think it just proves you can accomplish something. And I'm not sure if it proves much more beyond that. And I do look to some of our great pioneers of our time, for example, Elon Musk. I don't know how well college educated he is, but he always used to say, if I couldn't figure something out, I would just read about it. I don't think he has an engineering degree at all. And here he is designing space rockets because he just taught it to himself. So we're steps away from that with AI doing that for us, a lot closer than what we think. So, what would you say, Ty, to our viewers out there and our listeners as far as emasculating of men and staying manly and focused on being a healthy, masculine men out there in today's world? Like, what would be 3 steps you would tell people to do?
I would say the first thing would be to unplug from all the mainstream men are bad, masculinity is toxic, feminist propaganda out there. Once you unplug from all that toxic, negative propaganda, you'll just have like a healthier mindset. Another thing would be to really embrace your masculinity. Just really embrace the traditional male role when it comes
So,
to like
step 1 is unplug. Step 2 is embrace being a man. And I will tell you, the
yeah.
remodeling of the house I've been doing, every time I come home from working on the house, I come home and I do feel a hell of a lot more manly than if I spend 4 hours editing videos. So I can tell you, it makes you feel better about yourself from being a man, because it makes you feel like you've got something accomplished. So step 1, unplug. 2, embrace being a man. What would you say would be the third thing you'd recommend to any of our viewers and listeners?
I would say the third thing would be to coach other men and help them become more masculine, because I'm sure you heard of the old saying that steel sharpens steel. And it's, I feel like it's important for men to mentor and train other men and to help them become more masculine. So that would be the third one.
I like that. And there's different events that you can do as far as a man being out with other men and being mentored by other men. I know on another episode coming up, we've got somebody who's part of the Freemasonry. So whether it's bonding that way or whether it's bonding in some kind of men's club or pickleball league or something to that effect, I think is absolutely key, even if it's like a weekly golf outing or something to that effect. There's plenty of stuff in Denver. I know there's like these new bars that are popping up, but they're not bars. They don't sell alcohol. I can't remember what they sell. I think it's called Kiva or something like that. And I know that there's a lot of, because I had a friend of mine who we're probably going to have on the podcast down the road, but he moved out to Denver and he was like, you need to open up one of these Kiva bars because a lot of people are going there and having them. Are you familiar with these? Kava bars. That's what they are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kava
What is
bars.
What is this? I'm not familiar with this.
So are you familiar with this at all, Ty?
Are you talking about like juice bars? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, they're kava bars. So kava is this ingredient that releases a dopamine effect in your brain. It works very similar to, I don't want to say meth, but the more you take it, the more you need it in order to feel the same dopamine effect. And they have these kava juice bars all over Denver, and a lot of people are going there and having these juice bars and these kava bars, and it's one of those new social things that are popping up in Denver. And I was thinking for men, that might be a good way to go out there and bond with other men instead of having an alcoholic beverage, have a kava beverage. I don't know. Have you been to any of these at all out there, Ty?
To be honest, no, I don't think I've been to one of those, but
now you got to try one of them out now that we've mentioned it. You're going to be driving by. It's going to say kava bar and you're going to be like, son of a bitch, I'm just going to pull into the parking lot. I don't even know why I'm doing this. Just something Josh and Wayne told me I needed to go do, because you only live once, man. So you might as well live it, right? I heard there's a lot of these popping up in Denver. I wasn't sure if you were into that. They're not like alcoholic beverages. They're supposed to stimulate your mind and give you energy. So yeah.
I think I've driven past some of them. Is like one of them called like Quench with a Q.
Yeah.
WENCH.
Oh yeah. See, now you're gonna stop by one of those. You got to stop by once in the next week and then give us a full report on how it goes.
There's a lot of things like that popping up because Gen Z is drinking alcohol at a much lower rate than our generation, millennials, or even yours, Josh. Really, all the generations. People are coming up with different ways to get people out in public, right? So you mentioned the kava bars. I saw this other thing. I forgot the name of it, but it's essentially a group of people. They go on like a morning run, and then they meet at a place, and they almost serve coffee. So it has like a it's almost like a half of a coffee bar, but they also have a DJ that's playing music. So as opposed to like the typical nightclub, you go out, you drink, you get drunk. This, you wake up early, you go for a little bit of run with a group of people, and then they have a location you meet at, and you get coffee, and you kind of socially interact with people. So it's interesting.
Waking up first thing in the morning and going for a run does not sound like a fun time to me. That's just me. We talked about that before, about having weird workout times in the evenings. I'm not a let's get up and start running 2 miles once I wake up type of guy. No, I'm like, I want to have my coffee and contemplate my life choices.
Well, they have coffee. You just have to run the 2 miles or whatever duration it is to get the coffee, you know? So maybe that's why they picked coffee, because they know people really need their coffee. So if you dangle the carrot in front of the horse, the coffee, you're going to push yourself.
See, Wayne and I were down in Miami a couple of months ago, and the Starbucks, I shit you not, was 13 minutes out of the way. And it was one of the biggest deterrents, because it's like, do I really need Starbucks? And then it'd be like, yeah, today I do. You put enough obstacles up, I guess, yeah, maybe I would run 2 miles if it's really good coffee. If it was Starbucks coffee, I suppose you could probably get me to run that far. And we don't get endorsed by Starbucks to say that I'm just a coffee snob, but that's just that. I mean, that's just who I am. I'm a foodie guy, but I'm not too foodie that it needs to be way too bougie. And I'm a coffee guy, and that's okay though. So one of the things, Tay, that we have as a tradition on our show is where we ask you one question, and this is from our previous guest, and you don't know what the question is. And as a bonus, you get to ask a question to our next guest, not knowing who our next guest is. So this question actually comes from our previous guest, Juan, and he would like to know, if there was one piece of relationship advice you could tell your younger self, what would it be?
Wow, that's a tough one.
I know. None of these have been easy so far. Like, what's your favorite color?
As for relationship advice, always bring up politics and religion on the first date. I know it's considered a bad practice to do so, but in my opinion,
I love it.
Yeah.
Dig right in. That's what it's all about. Like, let's fucking get there, people. I'm serious, God damn it. I need to know, what religion are you and where do you stand politically? There's nothing wrong with that.
It depends. Let's say if this girl I'm dating is a liberal, I'm more conservative. But of course, there are like two types of liberals. There's the more normal, reasonable liberal, and then of course there's the crazy liberal.
Let's say she walks the shamanic path. My wife and I both walk the shamanic path, and she's a liberal, but she's very loving and understanding. And it's like, and she doesn't even care about politics. Like, that's the biggest thing. My wife, she don't give two fucks about politics. She's like, I don't care. When it comes to voting, she'll pay attention for about 10 days and then she'll vote. Besides that, she doesn't care about politics the rest of the year. Their job is to govern, and let them do that. And I'm polar opposite. I watch shit every goddamn day. That's just me though. So if she's liberal, but she's very lovey-dovey, besides the fact if she can start a Harley, then you're probably going to date her.
Yeah, and then also try to nudge her a bit and get her to become a bit more conservative. So that's what I would try to do.
Is there a conservative dating website? Do you know if there should be? Isn't there? I know there's farmers only. Farmers tend to be more conservative. Isn't there a Christian single or something like that? But then you automatically have that in there. I wonder if there's a conservative dating site where it doesn't bring God into the equation. I don't know. Do you know if there's one out there, Ty?
I don't think there is one. Maybe there was one
Fair.
a long time ago that did not take off.
Yeah.
I don't know, to be honest.
So what one question would you like to leave our next guest, now that you've answered the relationship advice, which I think is a good one, by the way? I like it. Just be right up front. Get the politics and the religion right out of the way up front. I love it.
Question for your next guest. This is evil question. task.
Oh,
But the
wow. I
question
really
is,
like this. This is the universe. This is the universe because I already know who the next guest is, but go on.
so the question is, tell us about your most embarrassing moment in your life.
Oh my God. That's going to be an amazing story. Tell us about your most embarrassing and how about what did you learn from that? So that way it's a question. Most embarrassing, would you say experience in your life or
Yeah.
most embarrassing experience in your life and what did you learn? These questions are amazing.
Yeah, so it's anti-woke books on X and also on Instagram, Facebook. Uh, I guess the message would be going back to that quote that I mentioned earlier of don't mistake my hard work for privilege and your laziness for oppression. So the message I want people to take is that hard work is not privilege and laziness is not oppression.
I love it. All right, brother. Well, we appreciate it, Ty. Thank you so much for joining us. And check them out on X, Instagram, Kickstarter for the book. Yeah, Kickstarter for the book. Absolutely. We appreciate it, brother.
All right, Wayne, Josh, thanks again for having me on. It's been great talking to you guys and take care.
Thank you, brother. I'm writing down this quote because I love it. I'm very much into quotes, as you know, because you're very much into quotes. You were sending me quotes every single day, but don't mistake my hard work for privilege and your laziness for oppression. I like. Yeah, I like that versus working out, going through a book and looking up a quote. I prefer that over working out, but I think working out for me might be a healthier choice from here on out. Who would you say is your favorite author or favorite playwright or favorite person that you quote, even if it's a political person or a musician? Oh, yeah. Bro, I am so guilty of it. In my office setup, I literally have my phone, which I'm usually playing poker. And then I've got my computer in front of me, and then I have another computer in front of me. So I've got one computer that I'm editing, another computer I'm either watching YouTube or playing a video game, and then I'm playing poker all at the same time. And there are times when don't get me wrong, there are times when I need to plug in. Like plugging in for a few days and just getting down to the grindstone and doing that helps tremendously. But it definitely doesn't make me feel manly. Like one of the things Ty talked about is embracing being a man. And it's one of those things when you're flipping a house and you're just like, I want to get this fucking done and I'd like to get it done this goddamn year and I want it done right. You're just going to have to goddamn do it yourself. And it makes you feel more like a man when you finish a project and you're like, yeah, that's what I did. I finished that. And I don't know. I think that's very key in today's society that we need more of is embracing the fact of being a man. I stubbed this shit out of my finger when I was putting back a piece of trim. I smashed the shit out of my finger. Blood went everywhere, crushed the fuck out of my finger. I took my glove off and I was like, fuck that. Stuck it under cold water, put paper towel wrapped around it, stuck it right back in the glove and went right back to work. And yeah, my finger still hurts like a son of a bitch, but it makes you feel more manly when you're just like, fuck it, I'm going to get done. Cause I could have smashed my finger and then called my wife and said, oh, I can't work the rest of the day because I smashed my finger. But it's like, sometimes you just got to suck it up and just fucking keep moving forward. And at the end of the day, you have a beard and it makes you definitely feel more manly and it makes you feel more accomplished. So I appreciate that from Tae Young, our guest today. Absolutely. Peace, brother.